Welcome to the Story Engine Podcast. I'm Kyle Gray, story strategist and mentor to world-changing entrepreneurs. This podcast is more than just an interview. Every week, I work live with 6, 7, and 8-figure experts just like you to craft powerful, stage-ready stories that drive sales, spark movements, and grow authority. If you're ready to turn your message into a high-converting talk, then you've come to the right place. Hello and welcome to the Story Engine Podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Andrew Quebbemann. Andrew is a financial planner from NoShameAndADollar.com. We're going to be talking about how many people have false beliefs about when a good time to work with a financial planner is and the many challenges that come up in life because of it. We're going to discover that there are many different elements that go into working with a financial planner, more than just saving money. And we'll be creating a story to showcase that. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Andrew Quebbemann. Andrew Quebbemann, welcome to the Story Engine Podcast.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for inviting me on. I'm super excited to be here and chat with you today.
I'm excited to dig into your brilliance. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Yeah, so I'm married, live in California, but I'm a transplant. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and not having winter around is still something that's a little bit foreign to me. And, these days between my business as a, financial advisor and just, in the community in general around, Southern California, just really enjoying getting out there, building the community. When I'm not working, you can find me coaching hockey on the weekends or at car clubs. Just enjoy being out and taking advantage of the sunshine that Southern California has to offer.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit about your work and your business. How are you helping and serving people today?
Well, yeah. So I guess before, or I guess what would help to define a little bit more about what I do is, I'm a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And as a term, that means a lot of different things, or it can, within the industry. And as some fields are highly regulated like ours, it just kind of helps to understand what that means. And to me, as a financial advisor, what that means is someone that's showing up in your best interest at all times in any kind of number of financial areas, but someone that is really agnostic into what the solution might be, right? Because everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. And so that's what we're there to do, is we're there to really just create options and flexibility in someone's financial life through simple and compassionate planning. And that's why it's kind of important just to kind of have that framework around what a financial advisor is versus maybe an insurance person or an investor person, right? Those are all included, but we like to take a look at you as a person, as a family, as a business first, understand all that. And then we kind of go into some more of the how-tos, as it were.
Yeah. Well, we've had lots of different experts on the show in finance in many different ways, helping with capital gains tax or
Sure.
infinite banking, all kinds of options. And it sounds like having somebody like you in our corner to really make sure that we can choose the best of these things. And like many different things there's so many different choices to be had.
Mm-hmm.
And from business strategies or marketing strategies, one of the problems I have is, as somebody who is a marketer, I know 99 things that I'm not doing at any particular time that make it difficult for me to feel like I'm really safe and secure. And so having somebody like you sounds like an important piece of really building a financial future.
Yeah. And I guess I'll ask you, right? I like to say there's no shame in a dollar, but from your side, like when you are thinking about finances and financial planning and there's all this different stuff out there in the world, what maybe gives you pause, probably relates to some of our listeners, is something that may be relatable that way.
When I think of financial planning, even though I've spoken with a lot, I think that I probably don't have enough money saved to be worth the attention of a financial planner, and that I will push off the horizon to some other time when my business is bigger and different things have happened in order for me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is probably the biggest thing that I could think of. I'm trying to guess or look into myself and see what other things.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a big one. That's usually a top 3.
Mhm.
The other couple are, usually along lines of I don't want to be held accountable to someone else, right? I don't want someone else to come and tell me what to do. I worked this hard. I've been doing this for this long. I've gotten this far. What do I need someone else for? And I don't want that someone else to have control over, what I do. And then third one that's always fun too is I'm too late. So, you'd mentioned, some people feel like they haven't gotten there yet. And sometimes life goes along and they get to the other side of it. And all of a sudden, well, I'm too late. And now no one can help.
I have that same problem with people in the middle one that you said, where a lot of people would that I work with privately are like, well, I've given a bunch of talks before, so I know how to speak, or I have a successful business, and so I'm a great speaker, and I don't
Mm.
need somebody like you to,
Mhm.
yeah, I think take control is an interesting way to say it, but I don't think they would exactly say it that way, but I do think they would think that in a certain way. And just being able to have somebody you can trust to guide you. And I imagine you have a similar process where while I have a lot of answers, what people come to me for is good questions and helping navigate their own like forest of ideas and
Yeah.
choices and stories
Yeah.
and options for you.
Well, and to that end, when you grow up with money, however you grow up with it, right? And I grew up with entrepreneurial parents, and even so, but I grew up in the Midwest. And when it comes to talking about your finances, you brought up the kind of the process of trust and how do you go through that to gain in the relationship that level of trust where you're saying, yes, person, because I'm going to ask you about your birthday, social security number, your address, how you made your money, where you made your money, what do you want to do with it in the future, right? And these questions are going to go on and on. I'm going to get to know you really, really well. And in a lot of cases, in just a couple hours. And, in the Midwest growing up, that would have made me very uncomfortable because Midwest nice is a thing, right? We're so nice that we don't even look at the person next to us when they're putting a church donation in the basket that's just going from one pew to the next, right? You don't ask how much someone's made, you don't ask how much someone's car cost, you don't ask how much someone's house cost. It's just not a topic. And you're going from that environment and all of a sudden you're in front of someone that's going to ask all these really personal questions. And it's okay to feel like a little bit on your guard, and especially at first as you start to understand more of what that person across the table is trying to help you with. And we see that all the time with clients and helping them get through just that comfort, right? Because the I like to call it, I'm a lighthouse, I'm not a tugboat. So I can't pull you through anything. I can't make you put money here, put anything there, but I want to guide the way. I want to show you where the dangers are. I want to show you where the opportunities are. And then we're going to walk on that path together.
And so I think before we started getting on, one of the things that you like to talk about and explore is people can see the opportunities a lot of times, or they know a lot of pathways, but they
Hmm.
simply don't do them. How do we, or a lot of people maybe are feeling like I am and I don't have enough yet, or I'm not far enough along. And then they eventually get to the point where they're like, oh, well, now I'm too late. And what happens with people through this journey that gets them from this point A to point B without ever really making a solid financial plan?
Well, I think, if you fast forward and you're feeling like today, there is this misconception that you don't have enough money, right? I'm barely getting by. I'm paycheck to paycheck, or I'm paychecking a little bit extra, but I like going on vacation. I like doing this and that. And I don't really feel like there's a lot left over. And a lot of times when we get into conversations, we end up uncovering something like to call leaky bucket syndrome, which is it happens to me, it happens to everyone. You go along, you're used to making a certain amount every month, and if I asked you at the end of the month, you've got this bill, that bill, and this bill, you're setting aside this much in your 401k, where's the rest of it? And they look at me and they go, I don't know. Well, let's really dive into it. And you find out we've done this for food delivery service, or we have more TV subscriptions than we thought. And some of these little items can add up quite a lot at the end of a month. And so part of it is just having a spotlight shone on some of those areas where money might be slipping away more than we thought. And when we're having these conversations, I don't ever want to get into a position where we're going to sacrifice the dreams of tomorrow for the dreams of today. And so, in running through where you're at, that's why we want to talk about the goals and how important they are to you to accomplish in the future. Because if retirement's really important and you never had the conversation about how to get there and you want to retire at 60, and then you give someone like me a call at 58, you say, "Hey, Andrew," and this has happened to me. And this is one of the tougher conversations that that I can have with some this client. He's a great friend of mine. He calls me up. He goes, "Andrew, I want to retire in 2 years." And I go, "That's great. Tell me more. What does it look like? Walk me through what your ideal retirement picture is." And in going through that, understanding better what he wanted and where we were today, I said, "Well, this is great. Let me go back. Let me do some math and let's figure out where you're at." And we sat down for our second meeting and I said, "We've got bad news. Like, we will rip this band-aid off. What you want to accomplish in retirement today, the math says it can't happen." And we had to figure out what our pivot was. And the pivot in the short term was, well, he's actually going to keep working for a little bit longer than he had thought. And it's not the most fun message to deliver, but that's an example of, I guess, of waiting maybe a hair too long. Is we didn't really understand exactly where we were headed. We didn't have the map out, and we got to that end point, and it wasn't the result that he was looking for. I think that's one of the main things. If you feel like you are listening and you're saying, "I haven't done this. This has always been on the back burner. This has always been the 12th most important thing on my top 10 list of things to do." And it's always just consistently number 12. Time is your single biggest ally with money, right? So when I say that, all the math, whatever investment you want to get, whatever risk you want to take, whatever return, there's always that balance of risk versus reward. Well, the only way that I can really chase a return over a short term is to really crank up the risk. And cranking up the risk means we're going to crank up the possibility that you might lose money or you might have to sell something, house, stock, whatever, when it's down. No one wants to sell when it's at its lowest point. You want to sell when it's at its most value. And giving yourself the opportunity, the chance of time for everything to work, no matter what those amounts are, that's always going to make things a lot easier on the.
And but why do people like what happened to get him waiting till he was 58? Like what is the internal process happening or the thoughts that are happening that keep people? I guess we've gone over these some of these things, but
Yeah.
and this is a good like but what are the symptoms of this that when this happens, do you know?
Well, I think, when you're in your 20s, right? If you're in your 20s listening, you are super excited. You got your first job out of school. It's your first time having a paycheck. You have health insurance. You're getting your first apartment. You want to travel with your friends because now all of a sudden you've got this extra income on the side and you're thinking a lot about living today. Maybe you want to find a significant other, maybe you don't, but you're able to finally, for the first time in your life, live for today. That tends to happen to people kind of fresh out of college.
Hmm.
Once you hit your 30s, your 40s, now we're talking a spouse comes along, kids might be in the picture, our careers are taking off, and we're trying to just really keep up. And especially if kids are involved, because we've got to get to the grocery store, we've got to get to the sports events, you've got to make sure that you do all the things that your boss asks you to do at work because you can't get fired, because we need to pay the mortgage, because we need to do all this stuff, right? And so that list just gets huge. And again, it drops kind of some of these tougher conversations back because, I guess I can't take credit for this quote, but this is one of my favorite ones. People only think other people die. And I invite you to say that with me one more time. I mean, people only think other people die. And I don't mean that to be a morbid statement. I'm saying that from the perspective that when you're going along and you're so enmeshed in your life trying to get from one place to the next, you're constantly of the mind that, yes, you understand people get sick, but it's someone else. And people get in car accidents, but it's someone else. People end up in situations where maybe they're laid off, but it happens to someone else. It's not going to happen to me. I'm really good at what I do. I'm a safe driver. I eat healthy. I get vaccinated. But that's where statistics come in, right? And if the average person lives to 68, 78, that means half the people die before that and half the people die after that. So someone is going to. And kind of having that as a perspective, I think that shifts some of the urgency on getting some things accomplished, because we can't ever guarantee what's going to happen to tomorrow, but we can control what we're going to do today, and we can put that path forward for today. So I think that's where, it's, I guess, a kind of a not infallibility, but maybe more invulnerability that people tend to feel, through their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then by the time we hit our 50s and 60s and retirement's around the corner and grandkids start coming into the picture, life starts to come a little bit more full circle, and we realize that we don't have a lot of time left. And that's why, it tends to be that, people want to have these conversations for sure in their 50s.
What are some of the things that you do as far as your approach that you think is unique in helping people achieve these dreams and successes? What are not necessarily the outcomes that you produce, but how you get us to those outcomes?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because, you'll never hear me say, I'm not going to ever promise that I can beat a percent of return, right? On any given day, someone might know more about life insurance than I will, or they might have a new annuity product or something else out there, like something else. There's always going to be an aspect that someone might beat me on in a given day. And I mean that for the same way that if you think of the best hockey player, football player, baseball player, basketball player, they don't win 100% of their games. They don't score 100% of the time. They don't get everything right all the time. So what we're here to do is we're here to be an extension of your family. Like, I want to be the person that you're comfortable calling on one of your worst days, like top 5 phone list. And you're having a terrible day, I want you to be comfortable to be able to call us and tell us what's going on. Because when we show up, the first conversation to the last conversation, I want it to be about you, about your goals, about what you want out of your business, out of your family, because we want to have a relationship with you for 30 years, because we know how impactful that we can be in protecting and providing for you and for your family with the full scope of a relationship on our hands. And, if that stuff is not important to you, and you want to chase returns, or you want to chase a different aspect of your financial plan, that's great. And there are a lot of people out there that can do that for you, but that's not something that we ever feel like we can promise. We want the best return. We want to provide the best in all situations. But on a given day, 365 days, one day out of 364, someone might be better than us.
But it sounds like it's about the long term relationship and trust over time that somebody knowing everything about one thing really couldn't provide.
Yeah. And that's where we have experts. That's from attorneys to accountants, right? We work with a lot of experts that are really good at what they do. And so they're always part of the consultative process, and, kind of the behind the scenes, where we always endeavor to be on the upfront for all the latest and greatest.
Curious if there's been a time where you've been really busy, and
Hmm.
if not with your own finances, but in the same experience of sacrificing the dreams of tomorrow for the dreams of today,
Yeah.
and like trying to keep up, there's so much urgency to keep up with everything, keep up with your family, keep up with your life,
Yeah,
and it's hard to be present or see the future.
for sure. Yeah, I am not immune to that. It is tough. That's why it's great to have a coach and a mentor and people in your life, have your own personal team, right? I think the easiest example to relate is, I was renovating my house, and, even going back to wanting to buy the house, right? I was one of those people. I came out of my 20s going like, how am I going to afford a house? Where's the down payment going to come from? And so that was a struggle even of itself, because I did not do a great job setting aside for my future in my 20s, right? I went on the vacations. I did all the things, enjoyed the heck out of my 20s. And then 30 came along. I was like, I can't stand living in an apartment anymore. How do I buy a house?
Hmm.
And so, ended up raiding part of my K to come up with a down payment. And for anyone that knows even a little bit about finance, like, that's not the best place to go raid for that piece of money. And so did that, and then proceeded to start renovating the house, really pretty much from the off. And this was all through COVID. And I just kept going and going and going and going. And, at the end of the day, did 2 full bathroom remodels, took down 2 load bearing walls, the kitchen completely redone. We took like a 1960s house. We modernized the thing from the ground up, from the plumbing, from the foundations, all the way up to the roof. And I love real estate as an investment and as a project that was fun. I'm not ashamed to say I made $80,000 when I sold the house. And for the real estate junkies out there, you'd probably tell me how I could have done that better. But over the course of 2.5 years and everything else that I did, I'd be hard pressed to say that I couldn't have just saved $80,000 instead of going through all the work and all the heartache and the headache of putting all that together. It was a ton of fun, but yeah, it was quite an experience to kind of go through that and see where that came on the other side.
Were you a financial planner at this time?
No, actually, I wasn't yet.
Okay.
I was still working in the pharma and biotech industry. Yeah, a little bit different world, but it was it was a great experience. I don't regret any of it, but the math at the end of it, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if the math really made sense.
Do you have any specific fiascos that you could call to? Maybe renovating a bathroom and a toilet explodes, or something going really wrong specifically in that?
Yeah, there was, I guess, quite a few to choose from, but I think one of the I don't know, one of the more interesting parts of renovating is kind of just taking stuff down, and you never really know how it's going to go. And my wife was my fiance at the time. And so we weren't quite married, but I had asked for just a couple help just to take down some beams in the ceiling, and they were like fake beams. They weren't real, so they're external, facade only type beams. And we were taking them down, and yeah, it's one of those situations where like you're pulling and you're pulling and you're pulling, you want this thing to come and it's just not releasing. And all of a sudden it went all at once and ended up slamming my hand up against the chimney on the inside. And I almost actually took my thumb off. If it wasn't for my glove, there's no way that I wouldn't have had to run to the emergency room to get that, that taken care of. Just again, you never know how it's going to go, and sometimes it just goes all at once, and there it is.
And now, can you tell me about a time, maybe when you became a financial planner, and you were also using these tools and these systems to
Mhm.
secure your future, and you felt a safety and an alignment in your own plan, and probably a freedom from doing those kind of things and smashing your thumb or working way harder than was necessary?
Yeah, one I electrocuted myself on accident once too. That was fun. Got to give contractors a lot of credit for everything that they put up with on a daily basis. Becoming a financial advisor, like it was kind of by accident. I found this like, actually now, since with a lot of entrepreneurs, you don't always intend to be in business where you find yourself, but life presents a solution for you and it's your option to take it or not. And, making the switch into being a financial advisor, again, great support from my wife. She was hugely supportive because I was going from a situation where very secure salary, very secure benefits, and really knew with as much certainty as anyone can have about the direction for my future. And going into the world of financial advising, and learning some of the things that I did, I figured out quickly there was a lot that I didn't know. I thought I was kind of well informed. I did the 401k match at my company. I saved occasionally into my savings account. I bought some stock here and there, but I didn't have any kind of real structure to anything. And I didn't have any understanding for the tax implications of what I was doing or the legal implications of what I was doing. I didn't understand how, if I got in a car accident, not only might that affect my ability to earn an income, but that might affect someone being able to sue me for whatever I had, right? You can't control all that. And realizing how many different ways there are to tackle some of those issues, no matter how much money you make, right? I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier where people think, oh, I don't have enough money to do financial planning. I don't have enough money to invest. I don't have enough money to get insurance of any kind that's extra. Turned out that's really just not true. And so for myself and for my family, right, put some extra life insurance in place. My wife and I, trying to have a family. And so we made sure to get her disability insurance, right? Because that can help her. God forbid she happens to have any kind of complications, in childbirth or something like that. They ended up being easy mathematical ways to cover off a lot of risk without having to put forth a lot of effort. Going to bed every night, understanding that in any kind of scenario that I can right now predict, my wife is covered. And because I want the best for her and I want her to be able to achieve dreams, even if I don't happen to be able to contribute to those in the future. That's really important to me. And I think that's important to like a lot of our clients. That's where we help out a lot,
Hmm.
right? They want the best for their kids. Just because life was hard doesn't mean it has to continue to be hard. It doesn't mean you have to continue to kind of perpetuate the same things that you went through as a kid. You can teach value in a lot of different ways, and we can make things easier in a lot of different ways too, so that we can handle different things. They can explore and expand in other ways. And that's what helps me, hit the pillow every night feeling a little bit more comfortable about everything.
Amazing. Andrew, are you ready to hear your story?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can remember walking up to the first house I would ever buy, wondering how am I ever going to afford this? Even with a good job and things, I didn't do a great job at setting myself up for my future. And I made a lot of mistakes on the way through. I decided it's time to buy a house and end up raiding my 401k to come up with a down payment and start the long process of renovation. I can remember being in the house with my fiance, changing out bathrooms, changing out floors, moving things up and down. And I remember one of these days asking for help taking down these beams from the ceiling. And I can remember one of these times pulling really hard, and all of a sudden this beam slams my hand against the chimney. It would have taken my thumb off if it weren't for gloves. And I just remember kind of shaking that off. I didn't think about the risk or the implications. Something like a thumb could have been small, but if I hit my head, or if something would have gone more wrong, could have been a really big problem. But I was young and wasn't really aware of the risk or the life that I was going through. I can remember selling that house for a little bit later, making $80,000 over 2.5 years. And while it seems like a big win in some ways, I remember thinking to myself, I could have just saved that little by little and saved myself all of that time and pressure. I remember leaving my job for the first time later and starting to really want to figure this out and starting to build a career as a financial planner. And what I thought was the safe path of having a job, I quickly discovered how unsafe that I was in so much of what I was doing. While I thought I wasn't making enough money to worry about these things, I discovered there was so much more than money involved in this. It was about leaving behind a secure future for myself, my wife, my kids. And even though I was saving money here and there, bought stock and contributed to a 401k, I didn't really have any structure or understanding of what the legality of this or what taxes could be. And I started to realize so many of the ways that one small mistake or one small accident could leave me without any of it. And I really began to master this process for myself and for those I worked with. I didn't want to just promise a bigger return on money. I wanted to be able to build systems and structures and trust for myself and those that I worked with so that I could be the person that you could call on your worst day, to have a long-term relationship, not just making a quick buck here and there, but to be able to call upon a diverse set of tools to make sure that you were safe and secure with everyone. I wanted to know many different kinds of experts to provide solutions no matter where you were in your life and why. And over the course of this, I started to discover so many ways to take risk out of my life, and so many evenings where I would lay down next to my wife and know that she was covered, know that my kids were covered with the right insurance, with the right financial plans, so much more than just about having money saved and being able to feel confident in a future like I never had before. And knowing that I didn't have to be renovating a house that I didn't want and doing things and risking things that I had done anymore. I was achieving my dreams, and I knew that I had created the space for them to achieve theirs. And that's what I'm here to show you and share with you today.
Well done.
Thank you.
It's fun to hear that all back.
Yeah, and maybe you hadn't thought of using that goofy moment in your house as a way to share with people before.
Yeah, there's there's things. Anyone that's done a renovation project, you listen, you're probably laughing along with me. It's man, what you find and what you run into. It's sometimes it feels like there's too many stories. You never know.
I find that home improvement projects and DIY things make for some of the best stories, particularly for financial planners, but in many different talks, I have seen these things become very, very useful and very, very valuable. And hopefully it can increase or provide a little bit more of a return than the house itself
But yeah,
over time.
I'm super proud of what we accomplished. And, my wife, like I taught her to build, like she didn't grow up with all that. And I did. I taught her how to build a wall. And so like her first wall that she's ever built is in that house. And I had her sign it with a pen. So if anyone ever opens up the drywall or whatever, they can see like, this kind of our little memento to the next people that do something different to that house. So yeah, it's a
Beautiful.
good time.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, do you have any closing thoughts for us today? And where can we go to learn more about you?
I'd love to continue the conversation. If you're listening today and you felt some of the things that Kyle and I talked about, I don't have enough money, or I don't I'm okay doing this, but I don't really want to have someone like really just being a nanny to me and telling me what to do and where to do this all the time. But I think it's important to get some peace of mind and to kind of have that conversation. Invite you to continue the conversation. Dollar.com is the best way to reach out to me. All it is an email and a name. And I promise just an email in return, if not now, sometime in the future. Happy to have that conversation with you when that time is right. Because, uh, you know, I believe for everyone, freedom and flexibility is just over the horizon for you.
Andrew Quebbemann, thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks for listening to the Story Engine podcast. If you're an entrepreneur with a big message and a 6, 7, or 8-figure business, I'd love to help you craft your stage-ready story live on the show. Apply to be a guest at thestoryengine.co/guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, leave a review, and hit subscribe. Because together, we are amplifying voices that change the world, one powerful story at a time. I'm Kyle Gray. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.